All right, good morning. It's going to be a beautiful one today. Let's talk about pulling with a minivan. I'm going to quickly try to tell you everything I know and everything I've learned about pulling with our 2008 Kia Sedona, or Carnival as it's called outside the United States. While this is not a fair comparison, I'm going to use Subaru Ascent to benchmark it, right? So you can understand when I'm telling you about tongue weights and things like that, what the difference is. So yes, it's not a fair comparison. This is a 2023. This is a 2008. There's a 15-year difference between the two. But the Sedona has kept up pretty well. Let me talk about space first of all. Do you see how much space there is in a minivan? Just love all the minivan space. And, quickly compare that to a much more expensive SUV, which is nice, but you could tell there's just less room. So when you're camping, keep that in mind. These are the different classes of a hitch: class 1, 2, 3, and 4. We want to make sure that we stay away from class 1 and class 2 because that's just not enough. Class 3 seems to be the standard. So the magic numbers here are the maximum capacity is between 350 and 500 pounds for your tongue weight. And the towing capacity, this hitch can pull up to 7,500 pounds. Doesn't mean your vehicle can. I installed this hitch a long time ago, and it's a class 3, and you can see, in fact, it still has, you see the weight carrying ball mount, 350, 3,500. That means that this hitch, right, is specifically made to have a tongue rate of no more than 350 pounds and towing rate of no more than 3,500. Well, guess what? The Sedona, the maximum tongue weight is 350 pounds and the maximum tow is 3,500. On the internet, you will find some places that the most it can tow is 1,000 pounds. That is true if the trailer does not have electric brakes. So if the trailer does have electric brakes, then it's 3,500. Okay, let's compare that to the Ascent. Here we actually have some, this is a limited model, so the tongue weight is 500 pounds and the maximum hitch tow rating is 5,000. So let's talk about tongue weight. Tongue weight is the vertical pressure that's pushing down. Sometimes you have those platforms that can't be more than 500 pounds. The trailer will be pressing down on the vehicle. The maximum it can press down on the vehicle is 500 pounds. On a minivan, the maximum is 350 pounds. That's probably one of your biggest limitations. We'll have to look at that tongue weight to make sure that it's less than 350 pounds. Just a reminder, and you know this, this is for education and entertainment purposes only. It is not meant to be any kind of legal advice or because that does vary state to state. So, all right, now let's talk about the first tent trailer that we bought. Now later on in this video, we're actually going to hook it up and you're going to see this tent trailer because we still have it. And then you will also see how we hooked up our travel trailer because we have that. So here's our tent trailer, right? It's one of the biggest ones, or the big pop-up. It's when it's fully, I guess, extended, it's 25 feet long. So this was not a small tent trailer. And so here's why we got it. If we look at the specifications, right, let me look around. The base weight, and there's the hitch weight. All right, here it is. So the hitch weight is 249 pounds. The van, remember, the hitch weight or the tongue weight is 350. And it just so happens that's 10% of 3,500. And 500 is 10% of 5,000. It should really be pressing down about 10% of the what it's weighing. So the dry weight, which means there's nothing on it, is 2,364. And when you add the carrying capacity, which is 866, you're sitting about 3,100. So you can see that this pop-up, it's a big one. Most pop-ups are not this heavy. It's within specifications, right? 350 is the max for the hitch weight. This one's 249. And then, of course, once you add propane and other stuff to the front, it'll get heavier. And we're going to find out how to measure that. That is our tent trailer, or what we call a pop-up. Okay, here's our newer travel trailer, right? And this one has bunk beds and it's nicer. So this one, the reason we got it was because here's the unloaded vehicle weight. In other words, there's nothing in it. And then there's the dry hitch weight, which means there's nothing in it. In fact, when that reference there, the weight reflects the rolling average. The trailer will vary depending if it's got different options. So the maximum unloaded vehicle weight, the UVW, is 2,880. And so the dry hitch weight is 290. So as you can see, we're getting really close to that 350 and 3,500. So when we went to Florida from Texas in the minivan, we had to weigh every single item that we had, okay? Because we could not exceed 2,860. So we only had about 400 pounds worth of stuff that we were carrying, and that adds up. A couple bags, some food in the fridge, and you'll be at the maximum. And then the hitch weight, right? 290. This one could do 350. So can it pull a travel trailer? Yes, absolutely. But you have to be extremely careful about these numbers. The tongue weight specifically, a lot of the travel trailers that we saw were over 350. Right there, that lets you know that that's out of specification. Can it do it? Can you put a hitch weight distribution kit and all this stuff on it? Absolutely. Are you supposed to? That's a great question. I wouldn't. Okay, let's talk connections. There's two connections. There's a 4-pin connection, and this is for smaller trailers that don't have electronic brakes. And then there's a 7-pin connection, and that's for your brakes, your bigger, over 1,000 pound trailers. And so you'll need those two things. There's always a 4-pin, and then there's always this 7-pin. Okay, this will be something that you definitely need to install. I installed both of these actually, and it's pretty simple to just hook it up, but we're going to talk about brake controllers. So here, the kit that you order, you don't have to cut the wires. It just plugs in to one side like a Y connector, and then the other side goes back to the brakes, and then some of those connections go here. Okay, but you will definitely need a brake controller. Okay, a brake controller will measure how fast you're stopping and then apply the brakes to the trailer, be the same as your van. So you can imagine that if you're gonna have to stop quickly, you're pressing on the brakes hard, and the brake controller is sending a message back to the trailer to press those brakes hard. So it's not just a simple light. The brake controller is usually at the front, okay? And here is the brake controller that I installed. At this time, the brake controller had to be horizontal, or as much as possible. I don't know if that's still the case. I've seen some where they're not, they're vertical. And so you can see in the van that all this stuff is vertical. There was very little place to put horizontal. So, and then what also happens is there's a lever here that if you get in trouble, you can pull, and when you pull it, it'll manually attach the brakes to the back. So that helps out in sway situations, okay? So you definitely need a brake controller. So I see a lot of vehicles with the 7-pin connector, but they don't have a brake controller. And so they cannot be pulling the big trailer because they don't have the brakes. When I installed this one, I did not want to mess with the pretty interior inside of a new vehicle. So they have what are called Bluetooth or wireless brake controllers now. Here is the CURT Echo wireless brake controller. Now, here's a very interesting thing about this. The brake controller is built in here, okay? So it can sense how fast you're stopping, and I'm gonna try with one hand to attach it. And okay, then this goes over there and there. Okay, I will secure it a little bit later, but the main purpose is this now is the brake controller, and now you attach your trailer to this. This costs about twice as much as the one that you install permanently, okay? The question you're asking is, well, then how do I do that emergency braking? Well, all that is handled with the app. Here is the Echo Smart, and let's see if it comes up. I have to turn Bluetooth on. And so remember how I pulled it underneath the brake controller? This one, I just would press that button, and you see that the brakes are being activated. Okay. Now, right now, there's nothing hooked up to it, so it's like it's wondering what's going on. So I actually have a tester, right? So we can actually test, and you can see that the 12 volts came on. The other ones are off, so that means that it does have power. So there's power always going to the vehicle. And then now let's press the button, and you see that second light came on. That's the brakes. So let's try it again. Press the button, and you see that light come on. So that's how I know that the brakes are working. So this is pretty ingenious, because you can have an extra phone, right, that you don't use, and you could just put that on your dash, and you'll be able to not have to install a brake controller into a nice pretty dashboard, right? Because I was like, man, do I really want to put a brake controller in here? And so there have been some advanced technology where they have a little button and the brake controller's inside, and then you actually make a hole here and put the button here. So that is definitely an option. But I really like this the smart option, right? So I'll have a link to all this on Amazon. It is real convenient just to jump in and know that the brake controller is always there. So that's up to you. We're not camping full-time just yet. If we were camping full-time, then we might go to a full-time brake controller. And especially if you're driving all the time, right? But if you're just going somewhere, it's not enough reason to do it. But here's the beauty of it. We can always do it later. All right, now here's important information. I just put the smaller ball that I had, and as you can see, it says 1 7/8, 3,500 pounds. So that's maxing out. That's like a class 2, right? So this is way too small, but I wanted to show you. They'll always tell you tongue weight 600 pounds, 6,000. So it'll always give you that information. So normally on an SUV, right, there's a small drop or a small lift. Okay, the minivan though, you have to have at least, I believe this is an 8-inch lift, 6 to 8 inch. Bought this one at Harbor Freight. Because it's so low, you really have to get it way up there. So you're gonna definitely need something like this. Now let's just take a look at the ball. This is 2 5/16, 5,000 pounds. So this is the one we use. And then to secure it, I bought these again at Harbor Freight. And so these go in and then they lock in, you know, just so no one messes with your... Now, of course, you need 2 hands because it just will slide over. So you can see, then this goes in, and I'll leave it there because I can't get to it with one hand. And then, of course, there's keys for it, right? So you're definitely going to have a setup where it brings up the ball of the hitch, it's got to be at least 6. Like I said, this one gives you plenty of options, and I believe that is exactly the option. So even if I needed to go higher, I can go one more, looks like 2-inch higher. So this one is actually perfect for the travel trailer. All right, let's keep talking about weight. So here's the thing, you can pull 3,500. The maximum tongue weight or hitch weight is 350. But there's a maximum that you could put inside the vehicle, like how much it can carry. A lot of people don't pay attention to that. So let's go over here and look at what it says here. The front is 2,998 pounds and the rear is 3,064. So really on the axles, right? So the most you can have on the back axle is 3,094 and the front is like 2,900 something. So how would you find out how much those weigh, right? And the way to do it is you take it into a truck stop where they have scales. And believe it or not, you can bring in the RV, bring in everything. You can weigh your front and back tires and see how much is on it. Now, I printed out from Edmunds.com, right? Maximum payload is 1,532. So let's see where they get that from, because here is curb weight. So curb weight is 4,365. Curb weight is basically how much it weighs. So the Sedona weighs 4,365 pounds. And as you can see, the gross weight is 5,897. So that's a difference of about 1,500 pounds, right? And that's what it said on that other piece of paper. Where'd it go? Maximum payload capacity, 1,532. So what does that mean? So that means that you got 1,500 pounds that you can put on it while you're towing. And guess what? We got to subtract 350 pounds for the tongue weight. So that 1,500 becomes now, let's see, 1,200 would be minus 300, so 1,150. So 1,150 pounds is what you could put in it. Now, if you start putting in the driver, could weigh, I don't know, somewhere around 200 pounds. The passenger, the co-pilot, 150 pounds or around there. And then you have some passengers, each weighing 100, 125 pounds, 150 pounds, 200 pounds. 2, 4, 6, 8. Really, if it's fully loaded with people, you're going to be pushing that 1,500 pounds minus the tow hitch, which is 350 pounds. So really you only got 1,100 pounds to play with. So keep that in mind when you are going camping, because guess what? All your equipment, you have to weigh it. Again, we can go to the local truck stop and actually pull up the van with the trailer. I've done it before, and I weighed both axles and the trailer to make sure that we were under that 3,000 pounds per axle, and of course under 3,500 for the trailer itself. Okay, let's compare and contrast. So here's the Ascent, right? The curb weight is 4,570 pounds. So obviously this weighs more. Let's go take a look at the specs on it. And they're down here. So hopefully you can see this. 6,000 pounds is the maximum gross vehicle weight. 3,000 on the front, 3,200 on the back. Okay. And so again, about 6,000 pounds. And what's the curb weight? 4,500. That's the curb weight. So really, again, you have about 1,500 pounds to play with. So even though these two vehicles can pull this differently, in other words, this one could pull, the Subaru can pull a lot more than the Kia, they can only take about 1,500 pounds inside. Now, if you have a tow hitch of 500 pounds, then again, you're down to 1,000 pounds, okay? And they quickly add up, 2, 4, 6, 8, 1,000. If everybody weighed 200 pounds or less, you know, depends, you know, how your health is. The important thing is you have to take into account the tongue weight, okay? You cannot be overloaded in the tow vehicle. Now, saying that, you want your tow vehicle to be as heavy as possible, because the more weight your tow vehicle, the less sway you'll have when you're pulling. All right, now let's talk tires. Okay, the tires on the vehicle. If you look at the, and this is upside down, but the maximum load at maximum, and this maximum pressure. So right now it says to inflate to 32, you know, PSI or something like that. But if you really wanted to get everything out of this tire, the maximum pressure would be 51 PSI when it's cold. Now at 51 PSI, this thing will ride like a rock. It'll be very uncomfortable, but the maximum pressure or the maximum load is 1,800. So if you think about it, 1,500, let's say, let's go down, 1,500. 1,500, 3,000, 45, 6,000 pounds. And what's the limit of a minivan? Around 6,000 pounds. And of course, they give you another 300 to play with, right? At maximum pressure. And so on your RV, we'll talk about inflating your tires all the way to the max, because that's going to be your best bet, but it is going to be the roughest ride. So this is controversial, and you'll have to go look at it. I inflate my tires a little bit more than what's called for, but that means that the ride is going to be rougher. Okay, it'll be noisier and it'll just be rougher. And you can look at, if it, you know, do you put 3 psi, 5 psi, how much more psi? I'll leave that up to you, but just be aware that the more inflated, the harder the ride, but then the more it would be able to carry. We talked about the equipment that you will need. We talked about 7-way, the electronics, the brake controller, the weight of the vehicle, and the tire pressure, and those things you have to take into account. So now let's do a real world application, right? Let's go actually get the trailer on so you can see it, and then what you need to, how to hook it up, and what you need to pay attention. That'll be the end of part 1. Please click on the link on your screen to go to part 2 of actually hooking it up to the tent trailer and the travel trailer, and sharing my thoughts on when you're pulling those down the highway because you're going on vacation.